Johnathan Rand, Johnathanrand, and I'm a writer and speaker, author, writing instructor. I was born in the Pontiac area, Waterford Township, but ever since I could remember, my parents had property in Grayling. And so we'd travel there for the weekends, and when they asked me and my sister if we would like to move up there, I couldn't pack my bags fast enough. And so that summer, between my 4th and 5th grade years, we moved. And I just loved it. I fell in love with the Grayling area, which I graduated from high school there. And in a roundabout way, throughout my career, I worked in radio and television for quite a while. And I had a lot of opportunities to travel to different locations and see different parts of, different states and such. But I always just made my way back here. This has always felt like home to me. I grew up in Crawford County, crawling around the banks of the Au River as a fly fisherman. I started fly fishing when I was probably 7 years old. I started tying my own flies when I was 9 or 10, and I turned that into a business. I became a fly fishing guide on the mainstream of the Au and the South Branch. So for a number of years, that was just everything in my life revolved around fly tying and fly fishing. And then now, as a writer of books, and I have an opportunity to travel around and such, I've got a pretty, my schedule is pretty balanced in the fact that I get up really early. My routine is I get a lot of my creative time, my creative writing done early in the morning. And then days are spent, I do a lot of, because I do a lot of different things, I have a lot of speaking engagements, I travel quite a bit. But when I'm home, I love being outdoors. We have 3 dogs, and they're in constant demand of, they're very needy, so we take them out quite a bit. And in the summertime, of course, we've got lakes and rivers, so we've got swimming and fishing and just any kind of activity out here. And just the perfect place to be, I think. I've had the opportunity to see so many different places around the United States. And we have some beautiful places around. There was a time years and years ago that I thought I might move to Dallas, and I got there and I thought, okay, I really like this city, but it just didn't feel like home. And everywhere I've gone, I've had that feeling. It's like, I like this part of California, I like this part of Florida or Virginia, but it never really felt like I was home. I've always thought of Michigan as someplace that's home. And I've thought about that quite a bit. What is it about Michigan that has drawn me here? And I think it's the fact, there's so many different things, but I love being outdoors. I love the forest. I love the idea that living where I live in northern Michigan, in a 4-hour drive or less, I can be in a major city, and I can have the conveniences of the city, or a 3 or 4 hour drive can put me so far back in the wilderness I could be lost for weeks and weeks and weeks. I could be up in the western UP and nobody would ever hear from me again. And there's just something to me that I feel really draws me to the fact that this is some place to me that really gives me a good centering in my life, so that I have the ability to go to these different places around the country and even around the state. But being here, I really feel grounded here. Well, I've always loved to write. I never really took it serious, and when I was growing up, I never saw myself as as an author and writing books. But I enjoyed writing stories in school, and I was always doing it, and a lot of my teachers encouraged me to do it, but I didn't really see it as something that as a career. But after I graduated high school, I started going to college for natural resources technology, and of course, you have to have money to go to college, and I wound up getting a job working at a local radio station in Grayling, and I knew nothing about the business, nothing about the equipment. I'd never been on the radio before, but I could read very well and I could write. And so one of the things that they had me do was make radio commercials. And that was something that I just really loved. I loved sitting in a little production studio, and I'd come up with these creative ideas, and I would make these radio commercials. And I did that for 10 or 12 years. And that, of course, involved again, an enormous amount of writing. But during this time, I've always been a voracious reader. I've always been reading, 1, 2, sometimes 3 books at a time. And I would get ideas for stories, and I would think, oh, that's a great idea. Maybe somebody should write a book about that. And finally one day I was like, that's a pretty cool idea. Maybe I should try that myself. And that's kind of what I did. I said, all right, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to start working on this novel. I've never done it before, but I'm going to do it and see what happens. And I loved it. After a while, I just realized that I'd really locked into something that had become a passion. I'd written some Michigan-based adult fiction first. I wrote 3 books, and they did pretty good regionally, and it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the local aspect of not only creating the books and writing the books myself, but reading about different authors who had done the same thing. And I remembered I'd come up with this idea for this Michigan Chillers, and I told my wife, I said, it really just kind of sounds like a series of kids' books, and we could base these stories around different cities or towns around the state. And so I thought, well, I'll try it out. And I did the first book, Mayhem on Mackinac Island. And 2 things happened with that book. It was, number one, it was just an enormous amount of fun to write. I really enjoyed writing it, but it really started to take off pretty quick. And I immediately started writing another book called Terror Stalks Traverse City, and then Poltergeist of Petoskey. And by then the snowball had started and was rolling down the hill, and there was really kind of no stopping it. I'd received letters from kids in different states who'd visited Michigan, and they were like, hey, why don't you write a book about my state? You could write about this or this. And I thought, man, that's a great idea. I could do that. So I started the American Chillers from that. So. Hi, I'm Johnathan Rand, and I chose the North.